to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
Sometimes people suck the life out of me like there's a prize at the bottom.
And Dale Hummel.
Come on, man.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, it's a great week. We have a lot of interesting things going on in politics. I had a great weekend traveling to a wedding in the state of Oregon.
Lies.
That is not a lie. It was a good wedding. I did enjoy myself there.
Lies.
Explain.
Dale, I got all your text messages before, during, and after. I would not consider that unless you have multiple personality disorders and you only send one personality sends the text messages and the other personality acts a different way in person. I mean, it could happen.
Now, for clarification, once I got there, it was much, much better. I was good. I did have issues en route to Oregon. My wife was asked to perform a wedding ceremony for the son of one of our close family friends. Took her all of about 3 minutes to get ordained online. So she's ready to perform the ceremony. She went out early to help with the wedding. So I had to fly to Oregon by myself. Ryan, this doesn't seem like a big deal to you, does it? Having to fly on your own.
Literally, I flew for the first time by myself when I was 5 years old. So yeah, I literally don't understand this. But
and up until maybe 5 years ago, I had no issues fly everywhere on my own and not a big deal. And here recently with COVID, they've been sparing the middle seat. So just the aisle and the window seat were taken, especially on Southwest and a few others. But it appears to have changed dramatically here on American United, and they're packing those flights as full as they can, trying to survive and trying to make a profit or not lose as much money. On the way to Oregon, I had one emergency landing, 3 planes, and nearly 2 anxiety attacks.
Well, what you're not telling our listeners, Dale, is the reason you had an emergency landing is because the smoke detector got set off because you were so nervous and worked up, you went and smoked in the restaurant.
There is some truth to that. The smoke detector did go off, so we had to make an emergency landing, assumably because somebody was smoking in the bathroom. I am very confident it was not me. And this anxiety issue that I had has nothing to do with COVID, really nothing to do with the emergency landing, but I was giving a middle seat. And for some reason, when I'm on a plane in a middle seat with 2 strangers beside me, oftentimes invading over the line of that personal space, it is very difficult for me. Very, very difficult. And on both situations or all 3 flights, I was put in a situation such as that. And it was painful. Luckily, on the way back, Holly flew back with me, and she serves kind of my blocker. She takes that middle seat, and I can take an aisle seat. Life is good. All is wonderful.
Dale, have you ever considered finding a shrink that wants a challenge?
No, my wife continues to discuss anxiety meds, which we maybe should look into, especially when flying. But I don't understand that. It's something I grew into recently, and it is real to me. But we're working through it, and we're getting there. The good thing was there were approximately 200 people at this wedding, and if you did not know COVID-19 pandemic was present, you would have not seen any signs that there was any COVID or anything changed, adapted at all at the wedding. Everybody was normal. Seating was normal. People commingling is normal. It was very enjoyable. Normality, I hope we all appreciate normality more once we go back to it in full swing.
You appreciated it so much. I vividly remember a text about the taco bar where you knocked people out of the way, dislocated people's shoulders so you would be the first one so no one else will have touched the taco bar before you got there.
This is
the bride has a broken ankle, people.
Now, I was towards the front of the line. It had nothing to do with me planning it. It just happened. And in hindsight, when I sat down with my wife, I said, well, that really worked out well that when you have a self-serve type taco bar, and it was amazing, by the way, just incredible. Maybe a touch too much hot sauce on a couple of the street tacos, but it was really, really good. But back to the hindsight, it probably, from a COVID protection standpoint, being a little further forward in the line was probably good. But in all seriousness, there obviously at weddings you'll get a lot of the older crowd. There was a huge mix of population, and there appeared to be nobody concerned about COVID. I'm not saying they weren't concerned about it. They weren't outwardly showing any issues whatsoever. It was really nice.
Lovely. I'm glad that you had a great time.
How was your flight to Florida and back?
The same as all the other ones. I don't know these airlines that you have been on that don't have people packed on the planes. After like the first 2 weeks I started traveling, like last week in April and first week in May, they've all been packed. So again, for those of y'all that don't know, Dale has this thing that like whatever he thinks is right or how it's supposed to be, that's happening. So he's just imagining these planes not being packed, people. They really were.
It's part of that medication that I probably need to get on. Maybe that will solve some of these issues. I was on several planes that were not packed. My wife's plane had like 20 people on it total. And then I get on a plane in Chicago to go to Denver to make a connection. And this is one of those international size planes, 10 rows across. I mean, there was maybe a handful of empty seats. It was as packed as what Ryan's talking about.
So other than your anxiety and medication needs, is there anything else you would like to bring up in current events today?
I noticed Carol Baskin's back in the news.
Well, Carol Baskin is on Dancing with the Stars, yes. And she danced for the first time last week. She danced again last night. And the judges saved her. And I don't know why, because no one likes her. She's probably one of the most hated women in America. And I'm not like a rabid Dancing with the Stars person. I was when it first started. And then when they quit actually getting stars and they kind of like just get people that have been in the news every once in a while now because they ran out of stars, I've kind of fallen off. But there for a while, it was a weekly ritual for me. And she is without a doubt the worst dancer I have ever seen on that show. So
I only saw a short clip. It did not look good, but I think, and I, if I knew what channel it was on, what time it was on, all those things, I might flip to it if I was in the house just because she's on it. I'd want to watch it just from the standpoint that you're saying she's that bad and it might be entertaining.
All you got to do is Google and you can get it on your phone.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to take that much time. If I came in and one of my kids was watching, I'd probably watch for a little while. But I think the fact that people hate her so much is maybe part of the reason they'll watch.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. There's some new information that came out about her past ex-husband death, and they continue to say we've got new evidence, but she seems to not be getting any more trouble over that situation or new charges. The other current event is we have a debate coming up, Ryan.
Yes, we do. As long as sleepy, creepy Joe Beijing Biden doesn't claim COVID and not attend. But yes, there's supposed to be one next Tuesday.
And I was under the assumption the debate would not happen. I'm starting to think it maybe. But at the same time, if it was going to cancel, I think it would cancel just before the actual debate. And Ryan, I think we probably both agree on this. Listening to Joe, and the fact that he's not taking hardly any questions that aren't already given to him, and teleprompters and all the things that are going into getting him through a news conference, it's still not off the table that something's going to come up.
Again, we've talked about this a little bit on here before. I'm not saying he's going to show up. I think if he punts and doesn't do it, it's going to hurt him just as bad as if he goes out there and, does a whole bunch of nonsense. And because the problem is, and again, I blame Trump for this and the Trump campaign. They have literally lowered the expectations of Biden's performance to a point that as long as he stands up for 90 minutes, does not drool or wet himself, he will have won.
I agree, and that's where it is. And I think if he does that, they're going to tout it as he did a phenomenal job. And you're right. I throw this on Fox News and the Trump campaign that they've put expectations so low. I believe that they deserve to be there, but it wasn't a good tactical move.
No, completely. So I think the only reason there will be a debate is because the Biden people know that all he has to do is go out there and he will have won. So as long as he literally doesn't fall to the ground or, something really, really, really stupid, like rip someone's head off on stage, he will have won the debate. So.
And do you want to tell us a little bit, just real briefly, the topics they're covering and who's moderating?
Well, your boyfriend, Chris Wallace, who I can't stand, is the moderator. You love him, but I cannot stand him.
Time out. I do not love him.
Yes, because your liberal tendencies again begin to show when you talk about Chris Wallace.
I cannot imagine where you get these liberal tendencies from. But Chris Wallace, what I appreciate is he doesn't pretend to be necessarily either direction. And I'm beginning to believe he may lean a little liberal after the Trump interview, but it'd be interesting to see if he would have been allowed to interview Biden if he would have hammered on him as hard. I don't know. Maybe it's that wishful thinking in my little view of the world. I'm hoping debate time that he gets on both of them as hard as he possibly can, because I think Trump can handle it. I think Joe's just gonna melt down.
I do not think Chris Wallace is going to do anything besides berate Trump and throw Joe softball questions. That is what my belief is. But
I hope that does not happen.
He has picked the topics, and they are, of course, COVID-19, the Supreme Court justice seat, the economy, the riots and protest, and there's a couple. Those were 4, but there's 6, and I can't. The other 2 weren't really anything, but yeah, those are the big 4.
I'm disappointed they're going to try to cover those 4 plus a couple others in 90 minutes.
There's no commercials. It's totally uninterrupted.
I want 3, 4, 5 hours. I want longer.
Okay, well,
think
Joe
you can
Rogan
call your people,
and Biden said no.
Well, I didn't expect he would say yes, but I don't know if you can get enough information in 90 minutes. I'm sure it's better than nothing, and I'm sure they were not going to agree to anything beyond that. Typically, and I don't remember, Ryan, presidential debates, how long have they ran in the past?
Well, with Hillary and Trump, they were 2 hours, but there were commercials.
So about the same. Well, let's cover a couple of those and just briefly so we can move on to our topic. But COVID's one of them they're gonna cover, and I think there's one response that Trump has migrated towards when Biden continues to try to throw him under the bus for his response to COVID. If people will remember back during the early pandemic days last spring, the predictions were at a minimum 200,000 deaths in the U.S. and under poor circumstances, up to 2 million deaths with poor management handling the actual pandemic. One life lost that is preventable is too many. But what we need to remember is the media has totally forgotten that here's the picture that was painted. If we can stay at 200,000 lives or anywhere in that ballpark, we've really succeeded. That sounds terrible in terms of succeeding, but that's the reality of it. But they've thrown that out the window. The Biden-Harris ticket, the mainstream media, it's all Trump caused every one of those deaths. And quite honestly, in my opinion, again, one life lost that's preventable is too many. But this was not preventable. If we were to lock the entire country down completely until a vaccine came, which you can't, you have to go out and get food. You have to have transportation. There's things that have to happen, essential things you cannot avoid. So you physically couldn't do that. So there was no good solution. I'm happier every day with how we've navigated through this and the fact that we're opening up more and more. And Illinois is probably being punished more than any with Beetlejuice and our illustrious governor. But it's a challenge. And in my reflection back on it, I'm pretty happy with how President Trump has handled it. Very disappointed with how some of the states have handled it.
Well, and again, thinking about all this and talking about it all, Trump can only do so much. The states have to handle the bulk of it themselves. I think he has made available everything in his power to the states to let them, handle each one of their individual states, because it's not a cookie cutter deal. There's not a simple solution for all this in every different area. And so that part, yes, I think he has done well. I think what I heard Trump say the other day was probably the most accurate and honest thing that he could say about it. And he said, in terms of his response to the coronavirus pandemic, he gives himself and his team an A. In terms of public relations, he gives himself and his team a D-. And I think that's pretty spot on right there.
I would agree. And then I appreciate that he's coming out and telling it as it is. And I think that's going to go a long ways for him. What about the economy? Where's the battle going to be in the debate on the economy?
It depends on who you listen to. And I think this is where Chris Wallace's bias will really show through. He's created over 10 million jobs since we shut down the economy and everybody lost their job. Stocks are back up. There's all these things that point to that this has been a very vigorous V-shaped recovery. There was a man on Fox this morning, and I cannot remember his name ever, but he's like one of the chief financial people in Trump's deal, and he said that the biggest October surprise was going to come in terms of something about Trump's economy next month. And he was saying that when this comes out, there will be no doubt in anyone who is undecided in terms of votes that they need to vote for Trump. Now, that's all he alluded to. He did call it an October surprise. It is about the recovery of the economy post-Rona under Trump's guidance, but I don't know what that is. But so there's that.
That's it. I hope there is something like that.
Chris is going to sit there and talk about how bad he handled it and the reason he shut down the economy, and that's why everybody lost their job and all this other stuff. And then he's going to look at Joe and say, Joe, I'm sure you would have handled it differently. And Joe's going to go, of course I would. And they're going to move to the next question.
And he would have shut down everything further and destroyed the economy even further.
That depends on the week, Dale.
Oh, I
Do
apologize.
not misquote Joe.
You're right. Well, we seem to forget
Last
in the main
week, yes, he would shut it down again. The 2 weeks before, no. You need to pay more attention.
I had to stay more current. Prior to the pandemic, is what we seem to forget is that we were experiencing the best economy our country's ever seen.
Does not matter.
No, it does. It does matter. Absolutely does matter.
We need to start into the news then.
We need to scream from the rooftops that this economy was on fire, and we need to think that wow, he can do this again, barring another pandemic occurring.
Well, I know he can, but again, you're not listening to the news, and the news is always right and accurate. Anything that happened before Rona does not matter.
It's simple to me. Between Biden and Trump, you have lower taxes versus increased taxes. Going to put small businesses.
Notice that's not a topic.
Oh, sorry. What about socialism versus capitalism?
Again, not a
talk
topic.
about that?
Not a topic.
It falls under the economy.
Not a topic, sir.
It directly affects the economy.
Taxes nor socialism is the topic. What part of this did you not understand?
Speaking of that, do you remember last week he was embracing the AOC wild Bernie Sanders trap, and this week, you know what he says? He is not a socialist. He beat the socialist.
Oh, that's gonna go over well with.
No, I think that was in Wisconsin. He said he beat the socialist.
Oh my.
Yeah, that's going to upset that far left. I don't know if it's going to upset them enough to not vote for him. I don't see them flipping to Trump over it, but I'm sure will not be happy.
That was not a wise decision.
Well, I don't know. I think it's wise trying to bring the independents in and assuming that the crazy left is going to stay with him. It might be a good move.
I don't think anybody believes anything he says because he changes every day.
I hope they realize he changes every day. That's my concern.
Literally, his opinions on the issue change as often as they do his Depends undergarments. I'm serious.
He looks, as my wife puts it, he says he this sounds terrible, but there's a little of a truth to it. He already looks a little bit like a corpse.
Oh, the most. Which another thing to bring up, and again, I don't understand this, but they have really limited Kamala, whatever her name is. She's not out there as much anymore. And I find that very strange. Because
I don't know if she's not out there, or are they just not covering her?
I thought she was going to be, freaking mainstream media loves her. They loved her during the debates. They think she's great. She's not out there. I find that odd. And so because I really thought that she was going to be the one that he stayed in the basement and she went out there and she like just ripped Trump apart and like she's not doing anything. And so I am wondering, like when you put somebody away like that, there's a reason for it. And so I'm thinking they missed something and they're hoping nobody else figures it out. And that's why they're got her on lockdown. I have no factual information in that whatsoever, but I'm telling you, they have literally taken her out of the airwaves, off the news. Something is up.
I think she's a liability. I think what they missed is they simply failed to accept she's crazy. That's what I think they missed. Let's move on to the Supreme Court. That's the third topic that's going to be addressed. Briefly, where are we at? I think it's pretty cut and dry, Ryan. You frame it out for us.
Well, RBG died last Friday, and of course that's terrible. And I'm not going to tell you that I agreed with everything that lady did because I don't. But she was an icon. She did do massive things for equal rights, and she's literally a cultural icon, like the notorious RBG. And so, my heart goes out to her family and all of her friends and all that. But here's the thing. When in 2016, when Obama wanted Merrick Garland to become a Supreme Court justice after Anthony Scalia died, the Republicans had control of the Senate, so they blocked that nomination. And they didn't block the nomination. They didn't allow the hearings. They did not. They simply didn't go through with it, which had been the precedent in other years. How this works in an election year, if you go back and study history, which I know, Dale, you and your liberal friends don't like history anymore, and you rip down statues and all that to prevent it. But if you go back and you study actual history, when in an election year, when the sitting president and the Senate are of the same Republican Party, they do go on and confirm Supreme Court justice nominees when a vacancy comes available.
Because they can. It's simple.
Right. When the sitting president and the Senate are of opposing political parties, they do not. This is not, nobody reinvented the wheel. This is how it's been. But in 2016, when your pal Obama was president and my pals Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell were in the Senate, they said no. Ruth Bader Ginsburg put out public statements that the president did not quit being the president in his last year of office. But also on her deathbed, she put out a statement that her dying wish was that her seat not be fulfilled till after the next presidential election. So may she rest in peace, but you can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. And my gay friend, it is that simple. Just as you framed it out. If a party has control of the president and the Senate, that's going to go through. If they have one and not the other, it's not going to happen. It's just that simple. And I don't know. I think both sides are hypocrites. No question. They're going to do what's in their best interest. And it's really that simple. It's amazing to me how the Democrats are threatening all these things. We're going to
impeachment.
We're going to impeach. We're going to bring Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. into states to increase 4 Senate seats that'll be Democrat held seats. They're threatening that if they take control, they're going to stack the Supreme Court, add numbers to the Supreme Court to neutralize the ones that are currently there. They're throwing everything at it. Nancy Pelosi, your best friend, has reminded everyone she has arrows in her quiver. I do not know what the hell that means.
But here's the whole thing. But see, the problem is she doesn't. And like everyone on Fox was talking about this. She can say that, but like she does not. Because here's the thing. There have been like half a dozen Supreme Court justices confirmed in less time than what it is till November 3rd. The plan is of right now is the up and down vote will be October 29th. There was one Supreme Court justice confirmed in 14 days. Now, granted, not saying that's going to happen, but the plan right now is October 29th. I do think that they have the support to take a vote before the election right now. The only thing that might change is nobody's done any polling on this, and there are 6 senators that are up for re-election that those elections are tight. So depending on the polling goes, they may delay the actual vote till after the election, but it will go through. The vote will go through one way or the other.
And maybe those arrows are a new brand of ice cream or a new hair salon she can go to where she doesn't. Maybe it doesn't.
Well, she has no arrows until everybody gets elected. Right now, there is nothing she can do. Now, after if Democrats sweep shit and take the House and Senate and the White House, yes, she got a whole new arsenal of stuff that she can do. But some of these things that she's saying she can do, some of them call for constitutional amendments, which she does not have sole control over.
She would like that control. She has
right,
not.
But it's not just the House, the Senate, and the president that have to have a constitutional amendment. It goes far deeper than that. It actually goes into the states, and so I just don't see those things happening. Now, the court packing thing. The one thing that I think is very interesting on that is Joe Biden for years and years and years and years has said, absolutely not. That is, you can go back almost anytime this has been brought up in his 47 years in public office, he has said no. Last week, he was pushed on that question and he said that he refused to answer it. And they asked him why. And it's because he said, this is just a Trump tactic to shift the focus somewhere else. Actually, what it is, Joe, is if you don't agree with court packing now, AOC and her liberal friends will probably rip your head off. But that's it.
That's it. I am with you all the way on that. We're running longer than usual in current events. And that's getting fairly long. We have riots and protests. Real briefly, Ryan, I think it's pretty simple when they address that in the debate. Where does Trump come down on it at?
Oh, it'll be the same thing. He's for law and order and the National Guard stepping in and take care of it. And I think it'll be interesting to see what Biden has to say if he says anything, because he's been real wishy-washy on the issue.
I think he's going to go back to we're pro-police, we're pro-law and order. He's just going to lie.
Well, very well could, but it'll be interesting.
No, it will be, and we'll discuss that in detail and Beyond the Circus here in about a week. We need to move on to our topic, but one last thing I want to bring out, and Ryan, I haven't discussed this with you. I had heard a little bit or maybe saw it on a news brief on my phone that Bloomberg is paying the fines for some of the Florida residents that have been convicted of felonies, and they're not allowed to vote unless they pay that fine.
Right, unless they make financial restitution for their crimes, they are not allowed to vote. So Bloomberg is raising, which he's not raising, he's actually just paying $16.1 million so all of these convicted felons can make their financial restitution and be allowed to vote.
And they admitted that the precise purpose of this was to unlock the black vote that will go 80% plus Biden.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's not legal.
I don't know, but Senator Gaetz is trying to, or I don't know, is he a congressman or senator? I don't know. He's from Florida, and he's really, really pissed off. And he is saying it's not legal and launching whatever committee he's on, he's launching an investigation.
Excellent. We're going to move on to the main topic. And this one is good. I think we've talked about a lot of different things on various episodes, but we haven't addressed directly what needs implemented at the show to better your chance of success. And maybe not so much just at the show, but your preparation, your packing of the trailer, your en route, everything you're doing at the show. We can put so much time and effort and dollars into these projects. And then sometimes when it becomes the most critical, that last 2 or 3 days prior to show that we're in transit or at the show, sometimes we aren't doing everything maybe as well as we should. Let's start off with packing for the show. What do we need to be thinking about, Ryan?
Well, of course, depending on species, everything's going to be a little different. But I think some general things that when you're getting ready to go to, it doesn't matter whether it's a jackpot show, a state fair, or a major show, that you need to think about and like plan out is first and foremost, in terms of betting at that show, do you have to buy betting at that individual venue? Can you bring your own, or do they supply it? Because those are things that every show is a little different. I mean, and so you got to find that information out because betting's a big deal at the show. You got to make sure that depending, again, if you're showing cattle, you've got to have a cage or some type of divider so your animals aren't on top of other animals. You've got to have your show box and whatever materials that you need to get that animal ready show day. In terms of just some common sense stuff that we have done when I was a kid or when I was helping kids go to shows, one thing is we always, and there's different ways to do this now, but like we would always take some of the water from that individual place where that animal came from in case they didn't want to drink. So because you can filter the water and you can do all that, but it's still going to have a different taste to some extent than the water that those animals are used to drinking at home. Now I know a lot of people, and I have not tried this, but I do know a lot of people that do it and have done it, where they start at home and they either flavor. There's things where you can make the water have a different type of flavor and color, and that's what they do at home, and they do that also at the shows, and that works real well for them. But I would just have some type of water supply that animal is used to drinking, whether it's, adding a flavor or color to make it look like the stuff at home, or actually bringing water from your individual house. The other thing is, in terms of feed, of course, you're going to take the feed to that show that animal has been on, along with whatever, supplements. So it's the same consistent thing. But also, it is not a bad idea when you're at the feed store or, getting bedding or whatever, grab another type of feed and just stick a bag in the trailer, because I cannot tell you the number of times I didn't have as much problem with animals drinking as I did eating. And when you put something new in front of them, a lot of times they're going to try it. And I mean, you're not going to keep that animal on it forever, but if it will keep that animal eating and full and at that show, it's a wise idea. So we always took a different type of feed as well.
No, I think those are some great points. And I'm going to focus even further on the water, Ryan. And I am completely on board with bringing water from home. I'm okay with them filtering or trying to flavor the water. But to me, it's very simple. We will bring up to 35-gallon buckets of water for traveling with a couple steers, goats, whatever we're traveling with. And keeping those animals on water is critical. Hydration is the only legal way to change muscle mass within that last 24 hours prior to a show. So hydration. If they're not drinking, we're in trouble. What if you're at a show and you can't use a pump on the cattle, or you can't use a drench gun on the sheep or the goats, and you can't encourage that hog to drink? Your best chance is that water from home. The flavoring agents, I think people have been doing this for quite a while. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm sure it helps, but I do not like to leave any room for error, and I'm going to bring that water from home, and I'm going to take it a step further. I'm even taking the exact water buckets, if possible, out of the pens that those animals are in at home. I'm taking the exact same feeders. I want to provide every opportunity to be able to control intake of both feed and water rather than beg the stock to eat or drink. Keeping everything familiar will help both of these. And maybe it's overkill, but I'm not willing to take that chance.
This might be another reason you need medication.
It might be. You mentioned bedding. If at all possible, I get worried in hogs and in, I guess, all the species. Maybe hogs and goats are a little more sensitive, but I would prefer to keep the same bedding that we're using at home, just for fear of some type of reaction or anything unusual happening if we have to purchase bedding at the show. And sometimes you don't have a choice and you have to do those things. You're another type of feed, Ryan. I'm glad you brought that up, and I hadn't even thought about it here this morning. But absolutely, when I can think about showing hogs, we're trying to put cake mix, egg. We're putting anything in that feed we can to keep them eating at these shows. You know what I found is sometimes as good as anything, just plain old gestation feed, primarily 80% corn or better. You throw that in front of them because it's a little bit different. Sometimes they'll eat it. Same thing in the other species. We don't want to do that unless they're just not eating. We never want to change those feeds up. But when you have no choice and they're not consuming, it sometimes saves your butt. Kaopectin, in case we get stressed and we get a little bit loose. Naxel, basically zero withdrawal on Naxel as far as an antibiotic that you can use that should stay within the legal limits. If allowed, drench guns, a pump, a muzzle for sheep or goats. Each show is going to be different, so we need to make sure that we're familiar with what that show is. And those things that, such as whether you can use a drench gun or not, are going to make a huge difference in how that animal is managed prior to the show once we get there. So all of these things need to be looked at prior to. You need to read that premium book and develop a plan that's going to be, as fault-free as possible. Don't leave any room for error if you can. Think about all the hours you've put in at home in the barn, and all of a sudden we're down to that last couple of days. Let's try to do it right then.
And another thing when you're getting ready for the show, and now more than ever, I stress this, do not think that you're just going to show up at that show and there's going to be a show supply trailer there with everything that you need in case you forget something or whatever. There are show supply trailers there at most of them, but now more than ever, I think with everything that's going on, especially, Rona and limited times being there, prior planning, depending on what you need to fit that animal or work the skin and hair and all that stuff, it's just as easy to order that stuff a week in advance and have it shipped to you. I know that shipping is free at most of those show supply outlets, and that way you have it, and you're always going to forget something. I promise you, we have forgot something at almost every show we've gone to, but I think that if you have it there before, you're a lot better off, because now more than ever, those show supply trailers that are there, I don't think people have thought as much about it. They obviously haven't been to quite as many shows as they have because they weren't available there forever. So you don't have as big a stockpile as what you had in your show box. So just take some time and iron out what you're going to need before you get there, and just order that stuff and have it when you go, instead of just banking on it being there and being available.
Great advice. I have some ideas on how to prepare the stock to travel with minimal stress. And I'm going to use the word stress all the time, the entire episode.
Too bad you don't use these on yourself.
The meds. Remember, we're going to rely on the meds that we're going to work on here soon. But you are correct. Minimize stress however we can. When we're thinking about putting them on a trailer, hauling them halfway across the country, I think it's a good idea. If we have a targeted show in mind, let's get those animals to another show prior to that targeted show. If this isn't possible, let's load them up on the trailer, get them to a neighbor's house or somewhere. Just make sure they have that experience of being on the trailer and being away from home, because the biggest mistake that sometimes we make, and I'm guilty of it, we're going to focus on this one show. We don't want to go out because we don't want to break with staph or fungus or ringworm or something like that, or we don't want to cause any issues, so we stay home until the show. Well, when we do that, that animal's going to stress more. They're not used to that environment. We can do things in the barn. We can turn the radio on and provide different noises that maybe they're going to see at the show. Once we're on the trailer, provide as much bedding and maybe wet that down. Provide as much cushion as possible, depending on what species we're hauling. Air ride trailers are great, but a bit on the expensive side. If possible, maybe even do this. Let's say you haven't gotten that animal out to any shows prior to this major show. Let's let them go on and off the trailer a couple times, just so they're used to being on the trailer. Put them on for an hour or two and take them off. Make it a positive experience. So when they go on the next time, they're not thinking, well, my life is coming to an end or something's terrible. Be smart about stopping.
Like you on airplanes.
Yes, I need more positive experiences on airplanes.
There you go.
Way more positive experiences on airplanes. When in transit, let's stop and start slow. Be conscious of what's going on. Less time in transit, the better. I know some people will leave way ahead of time and let them sleep on the trailer overnight, maybe get into the show or a fairgrounds a couple days ahead of time to acclimate. There's probably something to that, especially if we were going to Denver and some elevation differences. But In my experience, the least amount of time from the time they leave the farm or that show barn until they hit the show ring, the better. Now, some animals that are on the road a lot will acclimate, but some that haven't, it's just you need to get from point A to B in show.
Sir, I do have a minor point to bring up here. You said stopping with caution. I have been in a car with you where you literally turned off the road at like 60 miles an hour to go check out a vegetable stand.
Correct. A fruit stand, not a vegetable stand, a fruit stand.
Okay, whatever. But yeah, so
I was hauling the gay. I was not hauling show stock.
And your wife, when we were at Denver in September, did tell me that when y'all made it to y'all's destination, all of the luggage from the nose of the trailer ended up on the floor. So again,
that was not intentional. That was maybe because I was tired. I might have been falling asleep.
Oh, okay.
Not intentional.
I just wanted to bring those things up.
One other thing to throw out there, and we often do this when we're sending animals out across the country that have been sold. A lot of times, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, a lot of them won't drink or consume their normal grain on the trailer. They're just more reluctant to. Some will, some won't. But one thing on our sheep, goats, and cattle, most of them will at least eat hay. And I think if we give them some hay on the trailer, provided it's not going to mess with their body fill or whatever we're trying to do, that's going to calm them a little bit. And again, we go back to that stress thing and bring that stress down to a certain degree. So anything we possibly can to make that travel session less stressful, as quick and painless as possible. Very much unlike my experience trying to get from point A to B on an airplane nowadays.
And, Dale was saying that he thinks that the best way is the least amount of time that you can have them from the barn to the show ring is probably the best. And I'm not going to disagree with that. I will tell you that it is commonly known that when we went to shows, whether it was my group was the first one there and the last one to leave. Again, showing cattle is a lot different than showing the other species, and there's a lot more setup and tear down and all that involved. But in terms of cattle, the one thing that I would say that worked for us, and again, I'm not going to say it works for everybody, but what has worked for us is if you can get there early and get set up before the masses come in, you have more time for those cattle to get settled down and start to relax before the herds of people are moving their cattle in, especially at those bigger shows. So that, again, I'm not saying that's a perfect solution for everything. That is what's worked for us. If you can get there, be one of the first ones when they open up and get your stuff done and let yours start to relax before everybody shows up and it's mass chaos, that has helped keep ours calm at shows. So that's just a differing theory.
I think that is ideal, Ryan, and I agree with that 100%. And we're talking a couple hours difference to beat the rush and things like that. So I'm completely on board, and that takes us into the next portion here about what you do once you arrive at the show. And when I go into that, the most critical thing, once we get there, we prepare the pins or stalls for the stock if allowed. We talked about bringing bedding from home, so it's not a new bedding, not new smells. Try to minimize the change as best as possible. Once we get in, we feed, we water as soon as the animals get into the barn. And then to me, maybe the most important thing, and Ryan already hit on it, I want those animals to settle down. I want them after that long trip to lay down. I want them to relax, go to sleep. So once we get moved in, everything's set up, they're fed, they're watered, we have some downtime, or we don't have to do anything with the animals at that point. I pull my kids away from the stalls. I try to, if I could, I'd set up caution tape around them so nobody can even go near the pin. Yes. I do not want anybody disturbing those animals. I want them to sleep as much as they possibly can from the time we get there until it's time to go in the show ring. I will even find that the breaker box in the evening and shut those dang lights off so those animals can sleep better. Why on earth do we think we need bright lights on all night long with these show animals that are going to be showing the next day? I'm confused.
Especially at these bigger shows, some of these people you haven't seen for a long time. And a livestock show is a social event. There is no doubt. And that's a big reason why we all love it. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have literally about taken someone's head off. And some of them were people in my group, because you have a tendency to want to stand right behind those animals in the fan cages and, see your buddies and talk to people and all that stuff when you're trying to get those animals to lay down, rest, sleep, etc. And the first thing they're going to do is turn around and look at these people having a conversation, because they're literally right up on them. And there is nothing wrong with having those social interactions. Just take it 25 feet out from behind my cows. How about that? And so we have put caution tape up before. I'm not going to
I love
lie
it.
to you.
And you know what's surprising to me, and you and I hadn't discussed this, but we're both on the exact same page here. This is probably at the shows themselves, I see this being implemented less than anything else. I don't see.
Oh my God, it's everywhere and it's rampant and it drives me nuts.
And I don't know why we don't think about it. And it just, to me, it's common sense. Let's let those animals relax, sleep. Even if it's one of your kids that's kind of bonded with one, they really need to stay away, because every time they come up, they think they're going to get fed or attention or something. It's just, I can't emphasize it enough. If you haven't thought about this, and sometimes we don't, and shows are social gatherings. That's great. Be social, but just stop and think about it. And I think this will make sense to you. I really do.
Be social at the show box. Set up your chairs a good distance away from those animals, and have a great time. Just do not do it right behind my cows. I get very, very
exactly
angry.
Okay, depending on how long we're at the show, probably a good idea to get them up and walk in the morning, walk again in the evening. Be conscious of the flooring.
We exercise morning and night every show. I don't care if it's a jackpot or, the Houston Stock Show. We're going to exercise morning and night.
No, but I think it's just a good idea, and it's sometimes easy to forget to do it. And where I see it the best is all the Texas majors. So you have parades of the lambs and the goats. The cattle. Everybody's out there doing it. I don't see that in the north as much. And again, sometimes we're not allowed to leave the building. Sometimes we don't have a practice ring to go to. At all the Texas majors, from what I remember, at least, Ryan, they at least have an area set up to do that for the most part.
They do. And you are correct. I do not see it as much the further north you go. But at all the Texas majors, there is a designated exercise area for, I think, almost every species. And like you say, when it comes that time, and sometimes, like San Antonio Steer Show, for instance, they have turf now, and there's some areas where you can walk on that turf outside. But also, they normally, after the cattle shows are over each night, and the lambs, I'm not sure on the pigs, but I know on lambs and goats, they open the actual arena and you can exercise in there. But of course, it's depending on what time the show is over. So that can, be problematic at times if the shows run late. But I will say all Texas majors do a great job of making exercise areas available for all those stock to have that, and those families to be able to do that. I don't see it as much up north and at state fairs. I'm sure that, they make it happen somehow, but I don't know if there's a designated area for those things.
Yeah, most of the exhibitors are exercising, but there's not that organized path where everybody's in the same area and doing it together. So it's definitely not as noticeable. And some people aren't. Just that simple. Once we get in, we get them settled down, rest. We know what we're going to do for exercise. When I'm at a show, and it doesn't matter what species, at that point, depending on whether we're doing an actual weight, a weigh back, or declaring the weight, taking all those things into consideration, I'm spending the rest of the time working on body fill and hydration to get a better handle on what weight to declare, and then look 100% in the ring. And there's a very, very, it's almost a science to get all of that correct. And I wish I could explain to you just how to go through each of those steps, but it's something that you're going to have to work with, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error. If you have somebody advising you, great. That's going to steepen that learning curve that much more for you. But getting all of that right and making sure that you come in at the weight you're not going to weigh out at, it's a challenge sometimes.
Well, it's definitely a science. And I be honest with you, I don't know many people that have the same formula on it. And I'm saying, obviously, there's lots of people who are successful and do it different ways. So there's different ways to go about it. But I don't know many people that have the exact same philosophy or formula involved in figuring out, the ideal weight to turn in versus weigh back and all that. But I think the basic principles are the same, where you've got to find that weight to where, depending on the class breaks, and some of those class breaks are already preset in stone, some of them are not. So you have to look at years previous. You've got to find that weight where the body feel and the hydration for that particular animal that you were showing there is as close to perfect as you can, and yet you're still not sacrificing being in a weight class where you might be overpowered or outweighed by a lot, and also where you are comfortable enough that you can keep that animal and feel correct and not be afraid of weighing out.
And that's just going to take time and experience and guidance and all of the factors that come into play. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. It's just part of it. With that said, I can't emphasize enough that when we are working with these animals, that we need to make sure they stay hydrated. A lot of times we're pulling water because we think they have a little bit too much fill and so forth. But every time we start pulling water and feed, we're going to shrivel those animals up a little bit. And if we want more mass in the ring, we can't be doing that. So let's use some common sense. And to me, if we can keep pushing some feed and water up until when we have to absolutely pull back a little bit, maybe to adjust body fill, let's continue to do that. And we talked about not allowing animals to rest. The next biggest thing that I see it shows is a lot of these animals, by the time they hit the ring, are probably a little dehydrated. And that does not work to your advantage.
No. And one thing in terms of not only what you're talking about there, but also in terms of figuring out weightbacks, just like people, every animal is different. If you're at a major show and you do have a weightback or state fair, one thing that I suggest, because again, every animal is going to be uniquely different, take that animal in the morning when you're exercising, weigh that animal, and then, get that one full. If that animal is easy and real docile, go back and weigh it again after it's ate and drank all it can. But most importantly, at night, and I understand that some people don't want to do that in the morning, but at night, if you will go and after that animal is full, fed it, watered everything, if you will go weigh that animal that night and then weigh it empty the next morning when you go to exercise again, you will get a really good read on how much weight that animal loses in the course of a night. And that is critical to figuring out weightbacks and fill for actual show day, or at least it is when I am doing this at shows.
No, and not only just in cattle. I think that's across species, Ryan. And if you're not doing that, you're just throwing a dart at what weight you're going to hit that ring. And then that's not a good place to be sometimes.
Because there are going to be animals that lose a lot more weight than others and some that don't lose hardly any. And unless you have done this before with that animal, you don't have a clue. And like our shows in Texas, major shows, most people have a different animal for each show. So it's one of those things that, at least get a full weight each night and get a weight empty each morning so you know approximately how much that animal loses each night.
I think that's a great point. And I want to use an example. If we're in the South, and I'm going to use and I think across the board even, if we're going from San Antonio to Houston, San Antonio, we can push the fluids a lot harder and they're evaporating a lot more out because it's usually pretty warm in the barn. And we're losing fluids out of the body a little faster. We get into Houston in a more controlled environment, all of a sudden, those weights aren't dropping like they were at the previous show. Or compare a jackpot show here that's fairly warm still in the fall, and then we go into Louisville, it's more of a controlled environment. Those things are going to come into play. So you have to weigh these animals morning and night, know where you're at. Don't just assume it's going to be similar to the last show that I can put so many mils of water in a goat and it's going to be at this given weight. The environment's going to affect how much they evaporate out through their lungs and just where those water losses are.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with you on all of that.
Let's move into fitting, Ryan. And I guess to me, there's, and you and I haven't discussed by any means, but I think there are certain ways to fit livestock, and we're very proud of our fitting skills. And a lot of kids and a lot of people take a lot of pride in how they present the animals. To me, I want them presented in a manner that I like. However, we need to take into consideration and determine if a judge wants an animal maxed out regarding fitting or maybe a bit more natural. I think it's a good idea. I'm not saying change your entire game plan, but let's maybe just push a little bit towards what we believe that judge prefers. Your thoughts, Ryan?
That's something that gets overlooked a lot. And again, this is going to require research and education on everyone's part to know what that judge's style is or preferences is in that area. You know, for instance, in cattle, and again, I'm not just trying to like beat the cattle horse to death, but I think probably there's been a lot of fitting techniques and differences over the years. There are some people that want them just as glammed out as you can get them. Some of them like them a little, more natural looking. I think big things, and especially now more than ever, that are things that can really hurt you or really help you in terms of fitting. And at major shows, a lot of times this isn't even allowed. But at state fairs and big jackpot shows the use of fake hair is something that I think if you do it well, it can really just max that animal out more. If you cannot do it really, really well, I think it can hurt you a tremendously great deal. And, this is a big deal in goats right now, too. There are people out there that can do it and make it look like it is that animal's natural leg hair, and you would have to be razor sharp to figure out if it wasn't. But then there's the obvious where it's fake, it looks fake, and that's probably not going to help your cause in a lot of ways. And there are some people that absolutely despise the use of fake hair. I am not one of those people. If you can do it and do it well, get after it. But again, if I can tell that it wasn't done in an appropriate manner or a very good manner, I'm not going to kill you for it, but it's not going to do anything but distract.
No, I think I'm right there with you, Ryan. And an example would be if I'm sorting a show, I want them to look the part. I want them well fit. But if you are thinking about putting some fake hair on, it has to be done near perfect. And the goats you brought up, it is very popular. We have goats coming into the ring that it doesn't look like hair. It looks like plaster molding or just a clay mold.
I don't even know squishing. I don't know what that is they put on goats these days. But
I mean, if we can get the hair on like we would when you're fitting a steer and doing it really well, and I've seen a few people do a really nice job, but when we're trying to just mold it into a flat, no hair texture, I'm out. I'm not saying I'm going to disqualify you for it, but it's certainly not going to help you. And the other thing I'd like to mention, whether it's cattle or goats or wherever we're dealing with, we have to be conscious that in the rules, sometimes those things are allowed and sometimes they're not. If it's in the rule book and it's not allowed, 90% of the people are not going to do it. There's still going to be some that decide, okay, I'm going to try it and hope I get away with it. Those people at those shows, superintendents, need to make sure to enforce whichever way it is. And I don't care what it is, whether they have it or not, but I would like everybody on the even playing field. And unfortunately, a lot of times these rules get put in the books and then they're not enforced, where the people that are actually following the rules are at a disadvantage.
See, if you would just go back to my philosophy, there are no rules other than they start at noon, this would not be a problem.
It would simplify things. Absolutely would simplify things. So I guess it's good. And what about, and this is the same thing. Sometimes you're allowed to have others help you fit at the shows, and other times they're very regulated, where it's maybe only family or maybe only junior exhibitors. But if you're allowed to bring others in, and there's always others out there that are going to be better than you 99% of the time, bring them in, watch from them, work with them, learn from them, allow them to better teach you and better prep your animal to hit that show ring if you're trying to succeed at the highest level.
If it's free for all and anybody can do it and anybody can help and pitch in, which, again, I'm probably going to get on a soapbox here about this, and that's okay. I have never understood why you would limit who could help a child in any. I don't care if it's stock showing or Little League. I don't understand that concept. I don't understand that philosophy. I really don't understand it in livestock shows. And let me tell you why. Because anyone that has got to the level in this profession that people want to hire them to help their kids make their animal look as good as possible, they're a product of the system, folks. They just didn't wake up one day and, get a book, How to Fit a Show Calf for Dummies, and decide they can do this. They are a product of this system. They liked it so much and loved this industry so much that they wanted to make a living out of it or stay involved in some way. And that's why they're there. So I will never, ever understand why shows of any level do not embrace and let that happen. Because what you are doing is limiting kids in this industry to help other kids. And that's just innately wrong, in my opinion.
The Gay has great points on this one, and I'm going to take the other side just to
Wrong.
give you perspective.
Wrong.
And I'm with you. I happen to agree,
China.
but I can toss in there a few things on the other. I think it stems from the standpoint that sometimes when we bring an entire crew in to fit that calf, that possibly that exhibitor is not trying to learn, not trying to educate themselves. And I'm going to say those that are serious about it, those exhibitors that are really into this, they're going to be watching. They're going to be wanting to jump in and assist maybe on an offside front leg if we're talking about cattle or even a goat or whatever it may be. But there are some of those that really have no desire to learn. They just expect somebody else to do it. And good, bad, and different, I guess there's going to be that educational component that, hey, this is our project. We need to be more involved in it, I think is where maybe some of those rules are stemming from. But just like Ryan's rule about never start before noon and everything goes, the more things we put in place, and I've dealt with state fairs across the country, jackpot shows, not so much jackpot, but more state fairs and national shows, they start putting all these rules in place. It's near impossible to have the staff to implement everything. And then it becomes a nightmare because we're eliminating that even playing field. And I'm all about an even playing field. I don't care where the rules are. I just want everybody on the same field, because then you're providing the same opportunity for everybody and one doesn't have an advantage versus disadvantage, et cetera. So I agree with that. Our manager, Craig, and I always have an issue with this next portion I want to bring up, and that's...
Wait, stop.
Oh, you don't want to back up into this fitting.
No,
You don't.
Yes, because I'm just going to bring one other thing
Do
up.
you, do you remember? I agree with you. I'm just giving another perspective.
And I'm going to tell you your perspective is wrong, because let me tell you why.
Okay, you go right ahead.
I was a child that at jackpot shows, I had probably more fitters than anyone. I still, at jackpot shows, help fit front legs. I did tails. I did things, all kinds of stuff. I was actively involved in every single show. But there were people that were way more gifted at fitting my animals than me. And when it came time for a major show or state fair, I wasn't at the carnival riding the freaking tilt-a-whirl eating a corn dog when these people were fitting my stuff. I was right there scratching, handing adhesive glue, what paint, whatever, assisting. But why would I not let the very best people that we could get help me get mine in the ring and success? So the whole thing that, like, some of these kids that can do this, whatever, aren't actively involved. I'm not saying there's not. There's a whole big portion of us that were actively involved, but at that crucial moment in time, we're going to let the professionals help us.
And I agree with those statements. I'm just trying to explain where some of the philosophy may be coming from. And maybe not everybody's like you. Maybe some of these kids aren't involved at any level, even at a jackpot or a smaller show. I think there's lots of variations, and we need to look at each individual.
I hate to tell y'all, do y'all see how high my hair is? I didn't just learn that. That came from some people.
Not to mention the lashes and the mascara, all of those factors.
Exactly. Hello.
It's all there. Okay, we're going to move on to the point that I have trouble with our manager deciding when we get that animal up and start preparing to go to the ring. And oftentimes we're working.
I can solve this for you.
Working with multiple.
Time the judge.
And we do time the judge. I think there's good and bad. The longer you're up, the more time you have to do a really nice job of fitting. But at the same time, the longer that animal's up, the more irritated and more agitated they're going to probably be in the ring. They're going to get a little tired on you. So there's a fine line. The least amount of time up, the better, as long as you can do a professional job. It's the fact of figuring out that amount of time it's going to take you to fit and other things that come into play. I'm tending to want to get them up a little bit early. Our manager tends to want to get them up a little bit late. My children fall somewhere in between, and it usually works out.
And a lot of this can be handled at home, and people are like, what do you mean this can be handled at home? You can condition your animals at home to standing up for extended periods of time. Like I know in hogs, when they walk those every day, they time themselves and they build them up to know, because they pretty much have an idea of how long they're going to be in a ring at a major show or state fair. And so they condition them to be out there and still be good enough all the way through to that time. Cattle, we tie them up in the morning and the afternoon for extended periods of time so they are used to standing up that long. I agree, Dale. The shorter time you can have them in that chute or up getting them ready, etc., is better. But I am that person that I am going to make everybody get them up before they want to, because we're not going to be late to the ring. I have a phobia of it. I'm not, and so I am that person. And then when they're calling for the class and everybody's still doing stuff, I'm like, okay, put your shit down. We're going to the ring now. And so I am that person. But I think conditioning them at home is a big deal on that. That will help a lot. And that can be something that I just assume everybody does it. I know that they don't, but I am just a person that assumes that everybody does that. But conditioning them at home to stand up for long periods of time so you can get them ready and keep them in the show ring, that's something that can happen at home that can help with that. In terms of timing the judge, there are going to be people that are the very first class of the day. But if you're one of those first classes or first breeds, talk to people that have shown to that person before, get an idea. If you're not, you can go up there and you can time that judge. And what you do is you time each class, you time how long it takes him to do a breed, figure out how many animals are in that breed. You can figure out a really, really close proximity of how long it takes him to evaluate each animal, how many minutes, seconds, etc. You use that depending on how many are in front of you yet to go on when you get yours up. If you're judging to me, start at 6 a.m. No, I'm joking. I've started Civil Wars at shows because they say I go too fast and they're not ready. So if you're showing to me, start early.
And it is, and I'm with Ryan. I don't like to be late. I have that anxiety issue that I think we're never going to get it done in time. We're going to have to skip getting one of the legs fit properly. I don't like any of those things, but at the same time, the less time, the better. And I love Ryan bringing up the fact that we condition these animals at home. And I can't tell you how critical it is. You can't expect those animals to hold up without doing that. If you're going to travel to 35 jackpot shows prior to going to your major show, maybe you don't need to condition at home. They're getting that condition every weekend when they're out on the road. But if you're not showing hard, you have got to be doing those things. And it's probably it's critical across species. But we tie the calves up, we walk the pigs, we put the sheep and goats on stands. Just make sure that they can handle what's about to be expected of them prior to going in the ring. We do not want them in a situation where they're going backwards on us.
I mean, it's just like putting a person in the Boston Marathon. If they haven't trained for it before, they're not going to make it. So
no, it's not going to go well at all.
It's the same thing. So again, I just assume, because all the families that I work with, we always do this. I just assume that people do that. I know they don't, but it is something that everyone should do, as condition their animals to be up for extended periods of time on at least we did it every day. But do it at least several times before the show so they can be ready to acclimate to that and do the best they can.
Let's assume I'm staying off medication. With this philosophy, I should probably set between two strangers in very close proximity to get myself geared up to that next plane flight.
I think that would be a great idea. And I also think that one of your children should Snapchat this. Sit in front of you and Snapchat it to me.
Exactly. Let's go on to the actual showing itself. And I think a lot of this is common sense. We're just starting at the basics, but I think it's a great idea for you to get up there, watch a class or two in order to familiarize yourself with how the judge would like the exhibitors to work through the ring, as well as understanding.
And God bless America.
and understand, are there high spots, low spots, the footing? Can you brace harder if you're showing a lamb or a goat? Just take it all in. And when you're out there sorting shows and these kids come in that maybe it's halfway through the day and they still don't know where they're going.
Oh my God, it wears me out.
And it's so simple to go up and watch a class.
I mean, I cannot tell you the number of shows that class after class, the first person in, they don't know where to line up, whatever. And I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I do not. We've been doing this for 4 hours now. You should know. And again, from a judge's perspective, when that happens, that is a negative connotation that goes off in your mind. And little bitty things, we talk about all the time that the level of competition is so intense and so fierce. A little bitty thing like that may not, I'm not going to actively say, well, that girl didn't know where she was going when she came in, so, she doesn't do well. But if a decision is close, again, subconscious comes into play. And I promise you it does. And so you do not want to do anything when you're in the arena to give a negative connotation towards you or your project at all. And little things about going up there, watching, seeing how they come in, if the guy or gal's pulling from top to bottom or bottom to top, things like that. You would think that everyone would do that, but they don't. Everybody goes up there and watches the show. I just don't think they pay attention to those things. You mentioned the high spots and the low spots in the ring, what kind of surface it is, stuff like that. All those are very critical and important. Just go up there and take somebody with you. And so there's more than one set of eyes on it, and talk about it. If we go, some shows make you go in an order, some don't. If you go in third, then you're not going to be in that low spot right here when we come around and whip around on profile. Stuff like that. Little bitty things add up.
I love that you bring up the subconscious, and I wanted to dive into that one as well. And I think it's perfect the way you described it, Ryan. And whether we want to believe it's affecting us or not, in a close decision, I think this applies in giving oral reasons in a judging contest, entering a show, on stage, for anything. Anytime you're presenting yourself in front of an official or a judge, you want that official or judge to like you. I'm not saying that should affect your placing or anything, but the subconscious is going to come into play. And if they like you, it's going to be a lot harder for them to go negative on you in a close decision. It's that simple.
I'm telling you, that is the one thing about judging shows that nobody, whether they are a judge or a participant or exhibitor, they never want to admit it. They never want to even talk about it, or they don't even think it exists. But I promise you, your subconscious mind does have an effect on some things. And that's why you always either want to be portrayed in a positive light under that person that is sorting you, or just like you said, if you can make that individual like you, it is that much harder for them to want to put, like this past weekend, there was this little boy, I don't know, he was maybe 4. He was adorable. He was out there in this vest and this tie. And oh my God, he was just the cutest little, I wanted to take him home with me. And, I'm not a real big fan of very small children at times, but this little boy, I adored him. And he had these sheep. And, I just said it on this one class. I said, this is where y'all don't get judges or human. Everything in my body wants me to put this child first. and his sheep is just not good enough to do it. But you know what? He's going to be second. And by God, I can justify it. And that's how it's going to happen out here today, people. And so I will own it and admit it where a lot of people won't. But I promise you, it's real and it's a factor.
It's real and it's not even talked about. And the best example I can think of is when coaching students to go in the reasons room, one of the things that I try to beat into their head, and at that age, I don't think I'm successful as much as I would like. It's hard to wrap your head around it. Said, if nothing else, you go in there with mannerisms that official likes you. Get them to like you. All of a sudden, they're going to listen for what they want to hear, the positives, and they're not going to be picking on maybe those few little lies or stumbles that you come across. So it's absolutely critical. I think when you hit that ring, I would like you to be confident, but not arrogant, professional and polite, intense, yet make it look easy. There's so many things that come into play. And the whole fact that Ryan brought up the subconscious takes us to another level. So we've talked about some of these things in showmanship and so forth before, but let's not give up then. We're hitting the ring. Now is game time. Let's game on. Everything we can do to succeed.
So valuable information right there. I promise.
It's good. Let's talk about, okay, we get through the show. Maybe we have a good day. Maybe we have a bad day. And sometimes in those bad days, we're not really wanting to go back to the wash rack and break down and get everything done. But I think it's absolutely critical. We probably have another show. If it's not a terminal situation, break those animals down rather than waiting until you get home. And maybe it happens the next day. Feed and water prior to loading up. Allow those animals to rest just a little bit if at all possible. I know we're always in a hurry to get out of there. Let's do anything we can to bring them back to normalization and keep stress as low as possible after the show. A lot of times we're tired. We're throwing things in the trailer. We throw the stock in the trailer. We didn't water. We didn't feed. We didn't break down. Probably not the best path.
No, this goes back to like everyone making fun of me or the group that I'm with and being the first one and the last one's there, because we do just exactly that. And, especially at a jackpot show, some of these things run really late. And so show gets over at 8:00. You don't want to go break down your calf and wash it out and, knock the water out of him and feed him and water him again and all that. But I promise you, we do it every single time. And that is why I was labeled, he's going to be the first one there and the last one to leave. And it is things like that, just trying, because again, there is another show and you've got to, this one's over, whether you did good, bad, or indifferent, accept it, move on, but always know that there is another one next week or however long down the road, and it's a new day. And we've got to continually stay on top of that animal and do the best that we can for that animal to ensure success at the next show. And things like that right there are little bitty things that you can do to do that.
We talk about it, whether we're feeding or managing or health management, whatever it may be. If we do the basics really, really well and pay attention to the detail, just like Ryan's describing right there, that is why a lot of the same families continue to succeed. And maybe others are scratching their head and trying to figure out why. Well, maybe you're not doing those extra things. Maybe you're not paying attention to every single little factor that comes into play, and we really need to do it. I'm going to simplify things just a little bit in the entire process. To me, the bottom line is, if you can get that animal to look as good at the show as he or she did when you loaded them from home, you've achieved success. Limit the stress, allow the animal to eat and drink as it did at home, adjust fill there at the last minute, and I think you're going to be better off. We all of a sudden think we need to throw every supplement and magic potion at them that maybe they have or haven't had before. And that starts taking us sideways. We start thinking we need to pull harder on fluids, and that takes us backwards. Let's implement common sense. And if your goal is to make them look as good as what we had them looking at home, we're 90% there.
You actually did simplify that for the first time. I think you've been simple in your life, and it was very, very good and very valid, Dale.
I like thank you. I appreciate that.
Bravo.
There's one thing that I do not do well that I'm going to bring up just in case my wife or family decides to listen to this episode.
Mine don't, so I can say whatever I want.
You can get away with it. One thing I have problems with, and Ryan will, I'm sure, tune in and explain it, the anxiety issues and the attention to detail and wanting everything to be absolutely perfect. sometimes we forget about balance. And to me, if in hindsight, I can say this and tell you at the same time, it's very difficult for me to implement. Find a way to compete as hard as possible and yet make it enjoyable for you and your family, your kids, everybody involved. Try to avoid allowing the stress of everything involved to overwhelm you to where it takes away from the larger picture. I can assure you that it's easy to lose sight of quality family time that you're experiencing until it's all over with and you're done. And I am the worst because I am tense. I am fiercely competitive. I want to do everything possible. So what we have found is prior to getting in the show ring and prior to competing, we're fairly focused, try to enjoy things and go out to eat and have some good family time. But if possible, and it doesn't always allow it, depending on what show you're at and what's going on, maybe after the show, experience something in that area that's unique. If you're at Denver and it's in the GOAT thing, it's a terminal market show, stay out an extra day and take the kids up into the mountains and just do some things and take that deep breath and sometime try to think about what's really important. And I'm not taking away from competing as fiercely as you can, but if possible, bring everything else into it too.
Well, I think that's excellent, Dale. I can tell you that I do not do any of those things.
and I'm not very good at it, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I think that is an excellent point, and I do think that is something that if you can take an extra day to go enjoy something around that show, that would be great. But yeah, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that.
And I don't.
That is the focus of here at SB Cattle Company, because that would be a lie. And so we try. I mean, I have fun at a stock show regardless. I mean, and I know that everybody doesn't. They're not as passionate about them as I am or enjoy them as much, and so I'm going to have a great time if I'm in a livestock show, no matter what role I'm in, whether I'm the exhibitor or the helper or the judge. So I'm going to have a good time. So maybe that's why I don't look at it that way as much. And I guess I have surrounded myself with families that kind of have the same mindset. So we're all kind of like, we're a lot happier and have a lot better time if we win. And so...
And I completely get that. And maybe because of my perspective and when I'm at a show, I'm pretty tense, making sure everything is going to go the right direction in terms of preparing that animal as best possible. So I'm not enjoying the show, and to be just as honest or transparent as I can. Prior to that animal hitting the ring, it's not that enjoyable for me. So I'm the one that maybe is the outlier, and I just need to take a deep breath and enjoy things a little bit more.
I can tell you how to fix this.
Medication.
Smoke and drink.
The doctor says I'm not allowed to drink, and I've never smoked, so I'm in trouble there. I don't think it's going to work.
It's worked wonders for me over the years.
That is not the advice we need to give to the younger crowd, but all the parents out there, it may work.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying.
Let's
saying honest. I do. I don't know, whatever, but however you want to. But yeah, I'm just.
It seems to work. Are you ready for question and answer?
Sure.
We are going to take a question from Chris Alonso. Do you think the Hereford pig breed will ever be recognized by Texas, or will it always be classified as a cross? Now, Chris has submitted this one a couple times, and his persistence has got this on there. Ryan, I don't know much about Texas hog shows, so this one's all
I'm going to say the answer is no.
The answer is no. It's just not happening.
It's just not going to happen. And again, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm pretty confident the answer is going to be no here. You go up north, the Hereford pig breed is represented a lot. Not always, but a lot. For those of you that aren't from Texas and haven't shown here, where most states have a plethora of sheep breeds, forever we had 4. Now we have 5 at most major shows because we've had Dorpers or haired sheep. Probably at least 25 years, we made absolutely no changes to the classes or breeds of cattle no major changes to the breeds of cattle that we have shown. I still don't think there have been many major changes on the breeding side of cattle. We did have a major shakeup a few years ago in terms of steer classes and breeds, but they had been trying to implement that for probably 10 plus years. So we are not real accepting, or I'm not going to say me, but a lot of people in the state of Texas are not very accepting to change. And so, I doubt highly that the Hereford breed will become a recognized breed in Texas at major events for a little bit, if ever.
Excellent answer. And I know very little about it, but I would tend to agree with that. Megan Santel has a great statement and then kind of a question. I know that small county shows are stubborn and set in their ways. Would that be accurate, Ryan?
The most.
The most. If you have helped your county fair change and update the rules, structure of the classes, brought in outside judges, how did you all work with them and go about doing that? Ryan, you might be better at this one than me.
She's asking how to do that?
She's asking how to approach that small, stubborn county show to bring them up to speed. How do we get them to do it?
First thing, everybody that's on the fair board, you have to remove them from office and get new people.
That's a start.
It's called, it's not impeachment. It's a coup, attempt a coup at your county fair. Now, Megan, this is a tough question. And I am truly under the opinion that it is easier for some people that do more than the county fair and are competitive at statewide and nationwide. And again, I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I've seen it happen so many times. It is almost easier to win at a state or national level than it is your county fair. And it is for the reasons that you list in that question right there. How to change it is very, very difficult. The thing that I would suggest is, one voice is real easy to overlook. A couple, sure. The more people that you can get to stand united as a group and to constantly bring up these issues to whoever is in charge, at some point they're going to have to listen somewhat. I'm not going to say that, you're going to get everything around, but the more people that from that county that you can get, and y'all aren't going to agree on everything, but if you can find points of interest and similarities that you say, what, X, Y, and Z, all of us here in this group of 50 can agree on that we want this implemented and changed, do that. Because the masses are going to make more of an impact than a single voice. It's not going to be easy, and it's probably not going to be real welcomed in a lot of county fair settings, but that is what I would suggest. I would literally band together as many people as I could. And again, not everybody's going to agree on things, but if you can come to some common terms and agreements on several things that y'all all as a group want to see, and the more people you can get up there and present those ideas to who sets the policy at your county fair, the better off you're going to be. Do not loot or burn things. But other than that, I'm all for it.
Well, Megan, I think the gays really kind of framed it out as best you can. It's going to be difficult, and so many share your frustration. I'm going to be self-promoting for Ryan and I. I'm going to tell him just have your county board listen to Beyond the Ring. Maybe that will make some progress. But good luck. It's going to be a challenge, but we have to continue to fight that battle. Josh Michael submits a question. You have mentioned in past podcasts that people are leaving the left-wing states by thousands every day. Do you think people leaving change the outlook on voter numbers in the Republican states they're moving to? The states they are leaving will remain blue. However, if enough leave, they could change some swing states from red to blue. Not a livestock question, Ryan, but not a bad question.
Well, I think the mass exodus of people is basically from California. I think New York is starting to see some, but that is only after Rona.
And some Chicago.
No, everybody loves Beetlejuice other than you.
No, they're bailing. Beetlejuice is no longer popular.
Dale, again, is incorrect. But I think the mass exodus from California, specifically New York, I guess Dale can say that people are fleeing from Beetlejuice, whatever. I think that the reason they are leaving is because of taxes and, all of these different things that, maybe they're not all political, but like California, the regulations, the taxes, the fact that those major metropolitan cities have just become just riddled with, things that you do not want to see when you walk down a sidewalk in what you consider your place to live in. I think those people that are leaving, they're leaving because they don't like the environment and the government that is in place there. So that would make them they make them unhappy with the Democrats, because almost every major metropolitan city in America is been run by Democrats for a long time. So when they're had enough and they're packing up and leaving and moving to a different state, I think they're either going to be open to the Republican Party and the platform, or they're probably independents and undecideds that, again, they're not going to sit there and put up with what's going on. So again, I don't think, even though there is mass exodus from those states and they are just picking primarily a few states to move to, I don't think it's going to change the political climate that greatly. Now, on the flip side of that, if the Democrats do regain control and they open the borders and make it much easier to all these illegal immigrants to have the right to vote and give them a path to citizenship and all that, yes, in terms of Arizona, Texas, places on the border, Florida, that could cause an issue. But I think the people that are leaving New York, California, and Beetlejuice, they're doing it because they're tired of the Democratic control and their policies. So therefore, I think even though they may not be Republicans, they are open to the platform and policies of the Republican Party right now. So I don't think it'll be that big a deal. On the other part of your question, I don't think that you'll ever get enough lunatics and liberals out of California to make it vote Republican again. Sorry.
No, that's not gonna change there. And I think Josh is most concerned about the ones that leave California that'll still stay Democratic, that we may influence some of these other states. But just as Ryan said, I think most of them that are moving are probably conservative, and they're tired of that. The only exception would be is when prices of real estate have become so high in California that they can sell their home there and go live in a mansion in Texas or somewhere else. And that may not be necessarily a conservative, but just somebody wanting to avoid those high property prices and real estate. But it is real. It's happening, and I don't know how it's gonna totally end up. But hopefully it stays in the positive side. I want to thank all the new listeners that have jumped in, and our numbers continue to climb, and our rankings are stronger than ever. And we truly appreciate you guys jumping in and supporting Ryan and I and Beyond the Ring. And we hope that it's educational for many of you out there. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, your preferred podcast platform. Make sure to follow on there. That all continues to push the rankings and puts us into a position where we're trending on some of those podcast platforms, and it brings more listeners into us. But Ryan, it's been a great episode. I think a very valuable episode. I thank you for your guidance and transparency on it. Until next week, be safe.
Y'all be ready for the second episode of Beyond the Circus next week, after Trump literally beats the shit out of Joe Biden in the debates. So y'all be ready for that. And y'all come back now. You hear?